a genocide, is that cultural appropriation? It's a good question. That was a question put by our friend Barbara Kay in a recent column of the National Post, and she joins us now. Barbara, great to see you again.
Thanks, Ezra. Same here.
I want to say right off the bat that here at The Rebel, we're very sympathetic to Aboriginal people. And I think of all the different identity groups in Canada, it's actually the one that I think I do have certain exceptions. I mean, I generally renounce and reject all identity politics, grievance politics, but I do carve out, and I think I have an intellectual basis for doing so, a special care, even a duty of care, to use a legal phrase, for Aboriginal folks who were here first. I don't know if that's the inner liberal in me, but it's just how I feel. That said, this slow motion crime wave against Aboriginal women, usually committed by, frankly, Aboriginal men committing crimes, that ain't a genocide, and calling it a genocide doesn't make it so. That's my view. What do you think?
Well, I think genocide is a very important word and a very heavily freighted word, and we should be very careful about when we apply that, because there's nothing worse. There's no worse crime against humanity. And I'm willing to stipulate that many Aboriginal peoples have been victims of genocide. The Spaniards and the Belgians wiped out entire populations, and they did it purposefully and intentionally. And I'd argue perhaps what happened to Canadian Aboriginal people is not exactly a genocide, but even if it were, you could argue that, in the past, that there was a systematic attempt to, or to allow them to disappear or to, get rid of them in one way or another. But I was appalled because the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry had a narrow set of parameters to work within, and that was to inquire into this, as you put it, a crime wave. What happened to these women? They were killed as individuals, not as members of an ethnic group. They were killed as individuals, and it was a subject for law enforcement to discover and to investigate under the criminal code. Genocide is something that happens way outside of criminal codes. It's also not something that happens to one sex or the other. You can say that the massacre, for example, Srebrenica is often referred to as a genocide, but I would call it a massacre because it was only men. And there's never been a genocide that was strictly for women. That just has never happened. So it's a bad use of the word.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting point. As I mentioned on the show the other day, RCMP and other police forces have cleared 88% of the cases. So it's not like there is a mystery. By the way, the clearance rate for non-Aboriginal murder victims, women murder victims, is 89%. So it's almost identical. And I don't know, what I thought was going on there was, I thought it was political, obviously. I thought it was rhetorical, obviously. I thought it was cementing a grievance industry rooted in grievances. And that's why I despair so much about it. I believe that Aboriginal people in this country have a real problem. The problem is economic lack of opportunity, health problems, substance abuse problems, violence. There is a real problem there. But by saying no, this is a genocide issue, it's racism, you're all victims because of it, I think that arrests any possible progress, because it shifts the locus of the problem from, okay, how can we fix alcoholism on this reserve? How can we fix a crime problem on that reserve? It switches the blame to, I don't even know to whom, because I don't even know who theoretically has perpetrated this genocide. I think it's extremely unhelpful to actually solving the real problems that Aboriginal people face, Barbara.
Well, I agree, and that was the point of my column, was to say that if you keep deflecting, I think the fix was in for this inquiry to begin with. There were several chairs of the report who quit. And I think one of the reasons they probably quit is because they were being told, this is how we're going to frame this. I think the result was known before the inquiry was done. That was how it was going to be framed, was that this is an example of an ongoing, that was the word they used, that this is an example of an ongoing genocide. That's like saying that what's happening in Germany today, the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany today, is part of an ongoing genocide. It just isn't. Racism does not mean genocide. A higher crime rate from the general population does not mean a genocide. None of these things means a genocide, but the word is being used to, as you say, to really pour on the blame, to deflect any blame from within. And as you say, most of these crimes were committed by members of their own communities. Male members of their own communities. So how can a genocide, it makes no sense whatsoever. And I think that it was an overreach because many people reacted the same way I did. And they went, hey, come on, you want reconciliation. This is not the way to get it.
That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. Every day I do a video monologue and then I interview an interesting guest. And then I end by reading my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at therebel.media/shows.